But speaking of talking shit, and as we get to the final topic, and this is one I'd love to hear you talk about, as of course I mentioned earlier, I like listening to the Jim Cornette podcast. One of his greatest targets is Chris Jericho. He talks so much shit about him at all opportunities. Thank you. What he does, though, which I think is a little much, I think he's every right to trash his pro wrestling matches because you either like it or you don't. And he makes fun of how Jericho looks, which, to be fair, if you're a pro wrestler, you might want to fucking, not drink the day before a match and do what you can to look in the best shape possible. But then what Jim Cornette does is he has now started to make personal insults and bring up the fact that Jericho's wife is openly Republican and even went to the Capitol Hill protest. Doesn't mean that she was part of the riot or whatever you would call that, but she was photographed at the Capitol Hill thing earlier this year. Then they sometimes trade pretty hectic insults on Twitter and stuff like that, which is great for me because it makes me horny. I mean, interesting. Edit that part out. What do you know about the Cornette and Jericho feud? Is it legitimate, or is it just a really excellent way for the both of them to raise their profiles and get a lot of good clickbait out of it?
I don't know anything on a personal note, because I'm not connected to AEW. I don't talk to Jim Cornette. I watch his videos and things, the highlights from his show each week. I know he was in favor of the CM Punk thing, and see that's an issue I have with Russo, because I almost felt like both guys, they don't like each other, but I feel like they were both developing into parodies. But this week I was impressed because Cornette liked something on AEW, and he was able to say how perfectly it was done, to the point he even said it was better done than how he would have done it. So we'll see. I'm my show's with Vince on Friday, and I'm hoping that he's watched the Punk return and has actually a real objective way of analyzing it. I'll be disappointed if he hasn't. I don't know. I would think there is a realism to it. If you actually look at the careers of the two, the paths crossing, sometimes you'd find that these guys wouldn't say it if they knew each other from Jim Ross isn't gonna, if Jim Ross wasn't working at AEW, he wouldn't be going back and forth with Chris Jericho. He wouldn't be attacking him. But in this instance, Cornette's in the WWE until he falls out with Russo in 98, right? He's there from 1993 to 1998. So he's out of the creative team at this point. Chris Jericho comes in 99 from WCW. There's no real involvement with Jim Cornette. He may have been backstage doing his manager role, because I know he was managing the NWA then, and he was involved with Jeff Jarrett on screen and whatnot, but he wasn't involved in creative. And then Jim Cornette goes over to OVW, and he doesn't deal with Chris Jericho there either. So whereas you think obviously they've been around for a long time and their paths had to have crossed, there's no real relationship between Cornette and Jericho. The timelines don't sync up. Cornette hasn't been in the WWE through the 2000s, and he wasn't involved in a role where he would have crossed paths with Jericho in the 90s. So yes, I don't think there's a relationship there. So I feel like they can talk shit about one another, and it's really two almost strangers with no real strong ties and no history, where it probably is legit. That's just my theory. I feel like if you have a real history, you'd have more of a relationship, and it's less likely to happen. Whereas, I feel like, with Russo hired Jericho and was talking to him on the phone and brought him in, and then also and has also had him on his podcast and things since. With Cornette, I don't know. I could be wrong, but I don't know what the relationship is. I don't think I don't think they really have a relationship. So it's easy for you to then go into a feud. Look, he doesn't like loads of things in AEW. But this week he did speak well about the CM Punk thing. He spoke well about the signing of Bryan and things like that. So yeah, I mean, I think it's genuine. And the thing is that what he's attacking Jericho about, it does have credibility. Like I saw, when was this? Shit. It was like AEW benefited from a crossover of another show. It was an advert that AEW were running on TNT on basketball or something like that. What was it? A basketball game, I think, ran over and TNA was on next or something. I can't remember. But I remember a lot of basketball fans going, fuck, what's happened to Jericho? I can't believe that's Jericho. I'm glad I stopped watching. And the thing is that you can't try and like pretend that didn't happen. You can't just be like, you know, Mr. 2001, Mr. Social Justice Warrior, Mr. Turn around and go, oh, you can't call people fat. Oh, you can't take the mick out of transsexuals. You can do all this stuff if you want to. Like, you know, you can say whatever you can do and say whatever you want. Like it's there to be said. If you're on a platform that isn't going to kick you off for making fun of certain things, like, you know, whatever, like you can say it. And Chris Jericho is not above like the criticisms for what he does. Look, you're a fucking wrestler. Like your job is to go out there in your underwear and wrestle. Like half the job, whether they like it or not, everybody thinks, oh, it's like the promos and the matches and how well you sell and everything like that. Look, if you actually have a real intention of getting a casual audience, which an NBA audience watching, you know, following on to TNT, following on TNT to AEW would have been, and what they take away from is, Jesus Christ, Jericho's a big fat piece of shit now. Like that is your problem. Like that is your fault. Like you shouldn't be a big fat piece of shit with a pair of tits. Like you shouldn't be that. Like, and even if you've paid for like surgery to have a surgical, you know, you've ridiculously surgically paid for a 6-pack to be underneath your fat gut. Like you need to lose the fat gut so you can see it properly. Like you can't walk around with that body and expect people not to say anything about it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that like Jericho is always going to be a legend, but just wrestling the shirt, like just figure out a way to keep a t-shirt on, and because when a wrestler looks like me, then they're not a good wrestler anymore. I'm only joking. I've got a huge cock.
The issue for me is all right, you're older, you can wrestle with a t-shirt, you can do it, right? But you don't see Edge in a t-shirt, do you?
No. But no. Edge, though, I get the vibes going to need some of that hair replacement surgery soon, because he looks like fucking Simon Pegg if Simon Pegg joined Def Leppard.
What? So you think he's on stuff?
I don't know if he's on stuff, but I think that his hair loss is happening strangely fast as his muscles are getting thicker. He looks great, but there's definitely signs that shows that you know, that the 90s are still around.
Yeah, I haven't noticed that actually with his hair. I've noticed it more so with Drew McIntyre. I haven't noticed it so much with Edge. But yeah, I mean, I still think, okay, if that is the case or that isn't the case, but if I'm Jericho, I still got, look, the steroids these substances make a difference, but they don't make it, you still need to put the work in. And you can see, like, you know, Edge is going out there, like, fucking chopping trees and running, like, fucking long distances and doing all of that shit that he needs to do. He gets up in the morning and does his cardio. Jericho doesn't. Jericho isn't training properly. Like, Jericho isn't eating properly. There's no way you can be that way and then say that you're doing the same things. Like, he hasn't. He would have had signs of this before. Like, he didn't. You know, he wasn't a guy that was struggling to stay in shape throughout his whole career. He's managed to maintain that body throughout the entire time. And there isn't a massive age difference between a Jericho and a Cena and an Orton. There isn't a massive age difference, certainly between an Edge and a Jericho. There's no excuse. Like, I'm completely with Cornette. Like, and that's the thing, like, people have gone after Cornette for years about his like body and his diet and all these things. So yeah, it's all fair game. It's more fair game when Cornette's behind a microphone now and behind a keyboard. Jericho's on TV every week. If you're going to go on TV and you're going to wrestle, you take your shirt off and you've got a pair of titties. Like, there's no way like you can escape that criticism.
Yeah, and plus Cornette's wife